What's up? Welcome into the latest episode of Pod Like a Champion, the blueandgold.com recruiting podcast, this live edition on this Tuesday, May 18th, 2021. Welcome to all of you guys watching us live on YouTube. And of course, thanks for listening if you're playing back the video or listening on our podcast platform. I'm Patrick Engel, joined, as always, by our recruiting insider at blueandgold.com, Mike Singer, who I think in the last week, I don't know, unconfirmed, Mike, you can fill us in here. Maybe you went to all 50 states to go see some Notre Dame recruits. I don't know. How many did you actually get to?
Just three. Just
Slacking.
just three. I know. I need to get around a little bit more, but it is good, Patrick, to get around the country a little bit more. Things are opening back up. Pandemic is kind of not as big of a deal anymore. And with and I'm not even going to go there with the pandemic, but there's a lot more football. I was at a football game on Monday night. Like that felt really good to get back and see some real football.
So we're going to go into all of your travels here. You managed to see three states. What was it? I think 4 or 5 recruits. Well, anyway, we'll dive into it. First, we want to make sure you guys are following us on Twitter. Follow me at Patrick Engel _. That's ENGEL. Follow Mike at Rivals _Singer. And if you don't do that, we'd ask you, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just hit that subscribe button. It takes you one click. Absolutely free. And if you're listening on podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, subscribe to our podcast there. And if you'd be so kind, leave us a rating, leave us a review. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can hit that thumbs up button. It'd be great. It helps our videos reach more people. So, Mike, you went to, let me see if I can get this right here. Florida?
Yep.
Like Tampa-ish area, then further south, then
New
Jersey, then Georgia.
Yes. So it was
tell the people about it.
Yeah. So went down to the past weeks has been a whirlwind. So last Wednesday was Nakai Martinez in Orlando. Thursday was Devin Moore, a couple cornerback, 4-star prospects in the 2022 class. We'll watch their films in a second, and then Saturday morning, and I got teased a lot about this. Hit the Spirit flight to New Jersey, 7 a.m. I think it was departure, so I was up before 5 a.m. and then I tweeted out when I was in New Jersey that, is there anything to do in Newark, as the locals call it? And everyone laughed at me because they're like, no, it's like the worst town in America or something. But I didn't think it was that bad. But, but anyways, and so then the Rivals camp was Sunday. And then Monday, just yesterday on the 17th was Jack, and I don't want to mispronounce his last name because I've been practicing all day. And Luttrell, 2023 safety target for Notre Dame. Saw him on Monday. And Wednesday and Thursday is going to be Terrence Love, another 2023 safety, and 2022 defensive end commit Darren Agu, respectively. So going to be a busy next couple of days as well, Patrick.
So why don't we start in New Jersey, where, of course, you went to go see Notre Dame quarterback commit Steve Angeli at Rivals camp. Tell us about what you saw, what you thought of him there, and your overall takeaways.
Yeah, so Steve Angeli, 4-star quarterback pledge for the Irish from Bergen Catholic. This was his third camp this spring. He also did the Elite 11 and the Under Armour camp in Baltimore, which he got his golden ticket invite to the Under Armour All-America game. So that'll be 3 straight cycles for Notre Dame having an Under Armour All-American, which I thought was pretty neat. So he did not win quarterback MVP, Patrick, and I don't know. I kind of feel like he got snubbed. I mean, the other kid, I believe his name was Marco Lanes, something like that. 2023 kid from the Hun School in New Jersey. He was really good too. Like had some really nice throws down the field, and I think he's going to see his stock rise on the recruiting front. But for me, I thought Marco was really, really good late. But Steve was much more consistent throughout the entire camp when it came to which you guys will see if you're watching on YouTube here in a minute when they're throwing to these right here. They're throwing to the quarterbacks in the end zone. And you'll see like Steve was just extremely consistent throughout the day. And I thought he was the best quarterback. But, I'm not going to go up in arms a whole lot about it because, Angeli overall and really impressed me. And for those watching on YouTube, and if you're listening on podcasts, I highly recommend you try to, fit in watching some of these YouTube shows during your day if you can. But, he's just really impressive. I mean, the footwork's good. Look at the stroke. Like he's got a very nice release. Just throws a really pretty football. You see the size. That's a big dude. And Patrick, I've said this before, and I'll keep saying it, man. When you go and play quarterback at Notre Dame, you're playing in some cold weather conditions, taking some hits. I like my quarterbacks big. I do love me some Drew Pine. Don't get me wrong. But, because of his intangibles and accuracy. But to me, Steve Angeli, when it comes to accuracy, how well he throws the football, his intangibles off the field, he is like Drew Pine, but 15 pounds bigger and 2.5 inches taller. And that's a compliment to Steve for sure. So yeah, and I've been pretty outspoken about my love for Drew Pine, but to me, Steve Angeli, Patrick, I saw Pine in person at the 5-Star Challenge in 2019. I saw Tyler Buckner at the LA Rivals camp in March of 2020, right before COVID shut things down. I thought Steve's performance was just as good as those two guys, if not better. So I really do think the world of Steve Angeli, and he was really good on Sunday.
So that's an interesting point in that, all right, when you go to these camps and see these guys in camp settings, what makes them stand out? You can see arm talent and footwork and all that kind of stuff, or at least when you compare those three guys in camp settings, what specifically made Steve look, to the point where he's
sure.
where you think he looked better than in a camp setting? Let me stress this, than two quarterbacks on Notre Dame's current roster.
Yeah, well, I kind of cut that out earlier. We'll play that back in a minute, but I think the biggest thing when it came to Drew was for how good he was. When it came to the deep ball, Drew struggled like he just did, especially when there was a deep ball competition. That just was not his strongest suit. Buckner, it would be a little bit more of a coin flip because he was really good at the Los Angeles Rivals camp last year and netted an invitation to the 5-Star Challenge, which of course wasn't able to happen, unfortunately. And Jelly didn't get that invitation, which also I felt he was snubbed but hey, that's rather here nor there. But to me, Angeli was just more consistent. I remember Buckner was missing a lot early in that camp. I talked about Marco. I thought Marco was missing a lot of those kind of things early, and Steve was really consistent. Well, last year Buckner was pretty inconsistent early on in the camp and had some really nice throws in one-on-one. So just to me, Angeli was extremely consistent from start to finish. Just throwing the ball, whether it was deep, intermediate, short game, Steve was just really good, Patrick.
So let's go down to your Georgia-Florida swing here where, like you said, you saw Devin Moore, cornerback out of Naples, Florida, Nakai Martinez, 4-star cornerback out of Apopka, Florida in the Orlando area. And then just recently for his spring game, Jack Luttrell, the 2023 safety out of Georgia. So, again, I'm just going to give you the floor here. What you think? Where does Notre Dame stand, really, with all three of these guys?
Yeah, so we'll start with Nakai Martinez, 5'10", 170 pounds. We'll go pretty quickly through these guys. I know those with us live want to get to some questions, so certainly go ahead and get those in. But Nakai Martinez, you see he's not the biggest guy in the world, but he could be a really nice asset to Notre Dame's defense. You look at what Tariq Bracy did as the field corner in 2019 at what's Tariq Bracy, Patrick, 5'9", 5'10"?
He's probably 5'10".
Yeah.
He's listed at 5'10". I think he's actually probably that, if you measure him.
Sure. So I mean, I think Nakai Martinez. I mean, he about 5'10" and a half, 5'11". Bigger, like in broader kid. I saw him February 2020. Nakai Martinez looked bigger, and he's got some swagger to him. There's another word that I would use to describe him, but I don't want to curse. Like he's got some ish to him. You know what I'm saying? Like he's out here, and I'm watching him practice, and he's it's friendly and fun. But John with his teammates, like he's a competitor, is what I'm getting at. And look, Notre Dame has done a really good job with some other corners. So I feel like, Martinez, where he stands on the board is kind of iffy right now. Like I put a FutureCast pick in for him to land at Notre Dame back in February, and I felt really good about it back then. But now there's just so many other DBs on the board where I'm not sure, if Nakai Martinez will have a spot by the time that he is ready to commit. But overall, and here's a look at him at receiver, by the way, for folks watching on YouTube. But yeah, he's a good player, like a technician at DB. Reminds me of Jaden Mickey, Notre Dame's current corner commitment, which is like kind of brings up the question: do you want two smaller corners? Like certainly a valid discussion. So and now let's get to a big corner, Devin Moore. 6'2", 180. So you just saw those clips of Martinez, who again is on the shorter side, but there's certainly nothing wrong with that. But then you look at Devin Moore, and that's a big dude. With a lot of these tall corners, you project them a lot of time to safety because maybe they don't have great short area quickness, or their hips are a little stiff. Man, Devin Moore, not only does he roll on the ground really well, which I've never seen that drill, by the way. That was the strangest thing ever. I just felt like I had to include it in here. It moves extremely well. A fluid athlete. This would be a big get for Notre Dame. So Martinez will visit Notre Dame. Right now he's scheduled in for June 18th. Devin Moore is June 11th. Notre Dame's getting to the point where, like, let's say Nakai Martinez is a plan B guy. I mean, as the number 202 overall player in the country, he would be Notre Dame's highest ranked corner prospect since Isaiah Rutherford, Patrick. I think that's right. And Rutherford didn't even really pan out, so which is a different discussion. But that just kind of goes to show where defensive back recruiting is at right now. But I mean, you see Martinez runs like a gazelle, can flip his hips so quickly, see long arms, can make some really nice plays on the football. Some of the other schools involved here, interestingly enough, his two official visits he's locked in this June, Patrick, Notre Dame and Cincinnati. Like he built a relationship with Chad Bowden, defensive recruiting coordinator, and Marcus Freeman, the defensive coordinator, when they were still at Cincinnati. Those guys came to Notre Dame, and of course Notre Dame was already recruiting more while Terry Joseph was still around. But when they moved over, Freeman and Bowden, they just kind of picked up where things were left off when they were at Cincinnati. So that new Cincinnati defensive staff still involved with more. Stanford, Alabama, Florida, some of the other schools in the mix as well. And lastly, Jack Luttrell, saw him on Monday. 6'1", 185 pounds, safety. Really interesting recruit. His things are really just starting to kick off for him. Plays at a smaller school in the state of Georgia, and does 5 offers: Georgia State, Tennessee, Notre Dame, Arkansas, Georgia Tech are the 5 for him. Arkansas was the first. Notre Dame then came in. Jack still doesn't know how Notre Dame found out about him. I was joking with him about that yesterday. And watching his clips here, warming up, number 6. And he's a really good athlete, versatile football player. And we'll see him actually in the game here in a second. And we'll talk about his recruiting kind of after I'm done, Patrick, because put in a pick for him. So you see him here at receiver. That was only a pickup of a few yards, but and he's hard to miss with these highlighter looking gloves. But went up and got that ball, hung on to it. Put him in motion at running back. There wasn't a ton of him at safety on Monday. this team just really wasn't challenging him deep. Here he's at running back again, breaks two tackles. It was about to take the whole defense with them. And here he's going to make a nice cut, and he gets into the end zone here. So this spring game was not really much of a game. It was more of just like a scrimmage, I would say. So that play where he scored, and then this was the very next play. They're in a red zone session, so he runs a corner post route, takes a beating. He got flagged for that little spin in celebration there, but he was juiced up and excited. So the player comparison right now, and Notre Dame fans who follow recruiting know the name Jake Pope, a class of 2022 safety target for Notre Dame. When I saw Jack Luttrell on Monday, I was like, holy crap, he is Jake Pope 2.0. This white safety from the state of Georgia, but it goes beyond that. Like, their playing styles were similar. Their versatility, the swagger about them. They even have crazy hair. I thought that was a neat comparison. So, that's Jack Luttrell.
Notre Dame recruiting safeties in Georgia. Rinse, wash, repeat, huh?
Exactly. Yeah.
So you want to talk about that future cast? I think that's what people are really dying to know here. What led you to put that in?
I did. So yeah, I mean, even Brandon Plessner asking a question here. He says, "Would Notre Dame take a commit?" Let's see if I can make this a little bit bigger, and that's what she said.
Okay, Michael.
Would Notre Dame so Brandon asked, would Notre Dame take a commit from Luttrell so soon, being that they're already in the mix with some elite talent in a loaded safety class? I think you can make an argument that Luttrell is like an elite prospect. Like, Notre Dame really likes this guy, and definitely the good thing here is that they're going to see him on June 6th for Irish Invasion. So, I mean, if he goes there and stinks it up, then, they might have an easier decision on their hands. But, Brendan, to answer your question, I do think Notre Dame would take his commitment. I wouldn't have put in a future cast pick if I didn't think he was a player that Notre Dame really liked. So, that's kind of the situation there with Jack Luttrell. So, some busy road travels, some more coming up. So just make sure you're locked in at blueandgold.com. Our YouTube page here. And before we move on, I got to do my favorite thing on these YouTube videos, Patrick. And I know it's your favorite thing as well. People always comment about how much you love when I talk about Manscaped. Your balls will thank you. I was going to wear my Manscaped shirt, but my wife told me about 15 minutes before we started recording that it was in the wash, so I couldn't wear my Manscaped shirt. But some good stuff at Manscaped. Use promo code 20BlueGold. Yes, folks, your balls will thank you. If you're a woman listening to this, get some Manscaped products for your man. They will love it. So that is Manscaped. Use promo code 20BlueGold for 20% off and free shipping.
All right, Mike, let's get into important matters here.
What? Manscaped's not important?
No, this is even more important.
Okay.
All right, if you had to bet 5,000 Dogecoins on which of those three players that you defensive backs that you just saw, between Jack Luttrell, Nakai Martinez, and Devin Moore, of the one that's most likely to end up in Notre Dame's class, who are you going with? I don't even know if it's Dogecoin or Dogecoins, but all right, 5,000 Dogecoins. Who are you putting it on? I
still don't really even know what Dogecoins are. They just pop up whenever I'm watching YouTube, which is like all the time. I'll just throw on like Comedy Bites and watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine clips, or what I'm talking about, Patrick? Just book like.
I think the point is that you're not really supposed to understand what Dogecoin is. I don't know. I don't either, but I don't know. Just whatever value 5,000 Dogecoins has to you. Who are you putting it on to end up in Notre Dame's class if you picked one of the three? I know we're going cross class or cross cycle here.
No, I like it.
In 2023 and the others at 22, but
I'm gonna go with Luttrell, and I don't like. There's not like any like silent commitment stuff going on, but I still would go with him. I'm gonna grab a quick light here. My lighting's not very good. But yeah, I would go with him. I think when he visits, I think that he is going to love Notre Dame. And he could potentially pop first of those three because he's going to be on campus the soonest. So there's the better lighting from my pretty face, I think. There we go, if that doesn't fall off. Now it's blinding me. This is great stuff for podcast audience. Yeah, so I'm going to go with Luttrell. I think, I mean, you guys can go read the update I had at blueandgold.com, the gold standard this morning. I just think Notre Dame's doing such a good job in that recruitment that I think there's a good chance that they end up winning it this summer. He's going to be at Clemson as well in June, Patrick. So if, they offer, I think he's also supposed to be at Alabama. So this kid's just going to keep blowing up here. So, that's certainly something to keep an eye on. But, Devin Moore, what does his timeline look like? Nakai Martinez, what does the DB class look like by the time he officially visits June 18th? It's a great question, Patrick. But, yeah, I'll go with Luttrell.
Could you imagine if like these sports gambling sites that are now like the ads everywhere, like started letting you bet on where recruits are most likely to commit? Like how bananas would that be? And I mean, also incredibly bad because you'd have some idiots chirping out, "Hey, you cost me money by committing to Alabama." If some guy bet on him committing to Auburn or something, like just completely bonkers. I hope it never gets to that point, but I mean, it's you kind of can't help but wonder.
Dude,
right?
I mean, like I'm not really one of these people who's really into the name, image, and likeness stuff. But like, could that be a byproduct of like, can't you bet on like LeBron James where he's going to sign next kind of stuff? Like,
Yeah, you can.
You could. I mean, if college athletes are basically pro athletes, like, I mean, maybe you can start betting on that kind of thing. But then can recruits now profit off of this stuff? I don't know. I'm not really the NIL person, but who knows, man? I imagine that's going to end up being a thing eventually. I mean, good, but yeah, good Lord, that would be something.
Just complete bonkers craziness. You never want to see it. All right. One more topic here I think we should address before we take some questions from the people. Notre Dame dishing out a grad transfer offer. Cornerback, Caleb Evans, former Tulsa corner in the transfer portal. Grad transfer, 2 years of eligibility left. 23 career starts, I believe, 30 total games. Has the 2 years because one had an injury in 2019 where he was able to take a red shirt. And then this past year got the free year because the NCAA gave one to everybody who played a fall sport last year. So go ahead and give some background info here, Mike, just on anything else I might have forgotten. And then we'll dive into a little bit more.
Well, yeah, I'm curious, Patrick, to get your take on let's just go ahead and assume he does pick Notre Dame. We keep I keep checking my phone to see if it's happened because that's just typically how these things happen. Commitments happen when you're doing a live show type deal. So I mean, I'm curious your thought. I mean, whether he's a field corner, boundary corner. I mean, he certainly has the size to be a boundary corner, but does he have the ability to play out on the field as well? Certainly a discussion we can have, but where would you feel like he would kind of just fit into the overall cornerback room, Patrick?
It's kind of, I'd be curious if he does in fact commit where exactly he would go. He played boundary and field corner at Tulsa. And I don't know that this is as much a pressing need as it was a year ago when Notre Dame kind of had to get Nick McLeod and he was going to start. Like that was an unofficial foregone conclusion until you saw his name on the depth chart. Corner is still a position with not a lot of experience where, the only senior is Tariq Bracy and everybody, I believe, except for Bracy, Clarence Lewis, and I can't remember why I'm spacing on the others. And basically, anyway, almost everyone in the corner room has 4 years of eligibility left. From an experience standpoint, it's hard not to like what Caleb Evans would bring if he does in fact commit. But Yeah, I don't look at this as much of a need anymore. Just in the sense of, all right, Clarence Lewis is established in the sense of, all right, he's started some games. You know what you have. Hart and Ramon Henderson, the two boundary corners. You kind of look at it and know they haven't really played much. I mean, they played 92 or 91 combined snaps a year ago. But unlike when that was in 2020, when you had a newly converted receiver, Hart, who was injured in the previous season, and Henderson, who's an early enrollee. Both of them have been around for another year. We heard Brian Kelly and Marcus Freeman talk about their growth. It's at more of a point where you'd be comfortable seeing what you have with them than you were in 2020. So I don't know that this is as much of a pressing need, but I can understand the appeal here, just wanting to get some of that experience in with, really Clarence Lewis, Tariq Bracy, the only two guys with meaningful experience at corner who have started games. So I understand why they would do this, even though I don't think it's a clear must get kind of thing. And I was a little surprised to see him do it, but I think he would help them, and especially when you look at, all right, he can play either one of those spots, and if it is asking a little bit to catch lightning in a bottle twice in a row with a grad transfer cornerback, or a grad transfer at a position is important at cornerback. But if Notre Dame does, I mean, you feel pretty good about where it's going at corner, instead of, all right, you kind of wait and see what you have in a Cam Hart or Ramon Henderson at boundary, even if you like the progress that they made this spring.
Yeah, good stuff, man. Make sure you guys consider dropping us a super chat. Helps pay the bills here at blueandgold.com. We will get to your questions here in just a moment. But as always, you can get the DJ air horn right away if you drop us a super chat. We are very easily bought. Wanted to pop up the scholarship chart here. So here's Tariq Bracy, the lone senior, like Patrick mentioned. Where's this class, Patrick? I mean, who are these people supposed to be? Where are the juniors here?
Well, I had the chart set up in where, or you would have a junior in that spot if it was someone who hadn't redshirted. Everybody redshirted, like you see Cam Hart put in that little spot there as a sophomore per se, because he took a red shirt in 19, but he has 4 years of eligibility left anyway, because took the red shirt in 19, got the free year in 20.
Dude, the free COVID year thing is just it just drives me crazy. I mean, because the thing I keep going back to is like how many players is Notre Dame going to use it on? Because a lot of kids are either going to be like, all right, you've spent your 4 years here, like you're not really playing, like go transfer somewhere else, or you're too good and go play in the pros. Like I just feel like it's going to be like one or two guys a year. Like we saw, like Jonathan Doer, like there was a need there. Kurt Heinisch, a need there. And those two guys weren't like ready to go to the pros and had a starting spot there. Am I crazy in my thought there? I mean, do you think that's accurate?
No, I don't think you're crazy. It's a lot of these guys, that free year would be their sixth year, and it's just not that common for players to play 6 years because you just want to go be a pro or want to get on with your life after 5 years of college, even if your draft stock isn't to the point where you're a likely draft pick or anything. So, yeah, I agree. Even though you think of this like potential numbers doom, because anyone who uses the free year each of the next, I believe it'd be 3 years, uh, they count against the scholarship cap. But Jonathan Doer or Kurt Heinisch didn't count against it. But I just don't think it's going to ultimately be that many guys. And yeah, again, it's like playing a 6 year isn't for everybody. And yeah, I mean, you have a lot of guys who've redshirted who got that free year, like that 2019 class. Take a redshirt in 19, get the free year in 20. Now you're in 2021 with 4 years left. I mean, I don't think that that's a situation where you just assume everybody's going to use that. So yeah, again, 6 years just much more of a rarity than it would be if everybody. All right, what's the best way to say this? I guess is if everyone, or even 75% of guys who could play the 6th year as a free year used it, that would be way, way above the percentage of guys who normally take a 6 year or pursue a 6 year or for various reasons, if they even have the opportunity to, because of a medical waiver or anything like that. So, yeah,
I'm glad we
my
have
long
you.
way of saying no, I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I don't. I'm glad we have you because that stuff is just. I don't like it. It's just too much for this
I mean,
simple
it's probably,
mind.
I feel like I'm speaking a foreign language or something. It's just kind of hard to like explain in succinct terms, or how many random intricacies that COVID exemption created.
All right, let's get into questions. I think that covers it. Again, we do feel like that Tulsa cornerback um, will land at Notre Dame. Hearing some good things. We'll kind of see the timing of that. And then there was a San Jose State safety who announced that he landed an offer from Notre Dame. Posted some details about that on our Rock News Roundtable message board. Right now, I do not see him with the Fighting Irish. So let's go ahead and get into some questions.
All right, first one, Mike. If you have money on the line for one Notre Dame position coach to win a recruiting battle, who would you pick, and who do you think is the best recruiter on staff? I like this one.
Yeah, I do too. There's that first part. I mean, I have so many follow-up questions. Like what, what exactly the situation is. It's kind of like just a total general question. I don't know, but
I mean, we can assume it's not Notre Dame against San Jose State
right.
recruiting a kid.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the first
I don't know.
guy
Notre Dame against Alabama. Why not?
yeah, the first coach that comes to mind, right, is Marcus Freeman because he's the new shiny toy, and he is a heck of a recruiter. Don't get me wrong. I mean, when Brian Kelly recruits, he is fantastic. Like Brian Kelly gets a rap for not being a great recruiter, and a lot of times that is due to activity or inactivity, I should say. But when he recruits, he's really darn good. I've been saying that for a couple years since I started this job. Jeff Quinn is really good. Elston. I mean, there's some really good recruiters on this staff. I don't know, Patrick. I need another second to figure that out. What would be yours?
I mean, I would think it has to be Marcus Freeman.
You think
Right.
so?
I mean, I guess we'll see. Maybe that answer is either solidified, or someone else kind of has a summer where he wiggles his way further into the conversation. But I mean, right now, just with the energy Freeman brings and just how he leans into that desire to want to close the gap, to use the air quotes, I think that's just kind of the approach that you want. And obviously he has just a way of really getting to know these guys and get them comfortable with him, and then in turn being able to sell the benefits of Notre Dame that he's trying to convince them of. But yeah, I would think it's Freeman. Again, if we're in August and he's got a couple of top 100 players or something like that, or head-to-head battles against an Alabama or Ohio State or Clemson or what have you in the bag, I think that answer is obviously a little clearer now that you have some evidence and some juice behind it. But he just feels like the right pick.
Yeah, it's probably him, and he probably is the best recruiter on staff right now for as well as Clark Lee did at Notre Dame as a like bringing in the talent, right? I mean, like Notre Dame's defense has been very good. Like Freeman is just a step above as a recruiter. I don't think really anyone is going to deny that. So I think that's go ahead and safe to say. Even though I don't love being like the recency biased hot take guy, or not hot take, but like this is just the new shiny toy. Like, but it's still probably the right choice.
Next question. Could Notre Dame possibly have the MMM cornerback class? Mickey, Morrison, and more. Of course, that's Jaden Mickey, Benjamin Morrison, Devin Moore.
Whenever
there was a way it's like M&M. Or you like, almost when you say MMM, it kind of sounds like that. But
I think whenever you ask about recruiting, and it's possibly, sure, really anything can happen in recruiting. So absolutely, Brandon, Notre Dame could possibly have that class. And is it likely? I think you could even start to have that argument that it's likely. I think I haven't put in picks for Morrison or Moore yet to land at Notre Dame. Certainly am close to both. More so Morrison. More so Morrison than Moore. That's a heck of a sentence right now. But yeah, so you could
She sells by the seashore.
Yeah, for sure.
Next up here, Mike, what can you tell us about Virginia's slot receiver, Xavier Bradshaw? Notre Dame making inroads with him, of course. Xavier Bradshaw from Virginia, son of former NFL running back Matt Bradshaw. What do you got?
Yeah, Notre Dame's doing a nice job in this recruitment. I think they're they're not going to take any commitments right now to scare off like a CJ Williams or Tobias Merriweather, the two I think who are really at the top of the board. Dell Alexander is making Xavier Bradshaw feel loved up. They're discussing an official visit. If that takes place, I expect it to be at the end of June. But, I've felt like since Notre Dame offered Bradshaw earlier this spring that if they want him in the class, I think that's where he'll end up. So, I mean, look, guys, if Notre Dame went hard after him right now and got him, and then, like if they could get these not low-hanging fruit, but like the guys that they could get, then they would just fill up, and then you'd be pissed that they don't have room for CJ Williams. So like they went and got a Morion Walker. Like when you have zero commitments, beggars can't be choosers, as so to speak. So they liked a Morion Walker and they got a Morion Walker. If CJ Williams was the first commitment, then would they have taken a Morion Walker? I don't know, but it kind of goes back to the saying, a bird in the hand's worth two in the bush. So they liked a Morion Walker. They went and got a Morion Walker. Maybe if Bradshaw, wanted to be the first guy in, I think maybe he got his offer after Walker committed. But you guys kind of understand what I'm getting at. Like if Bradshaw, wanted to commit while Notre Dame still had zero commits, then like maybe he'd still be in the class, right off the bat. So kind of a long way to answer your question, Eugene. Yes, they're making inroads with him. There's a great relationship there. Dell Alexander's done plenty of Zoom calls with him, but no official visit set up. And now I can start using this term again with recruiting. Always follow the visits. That's what I always say with recruiting. I've covered a bunch of different schools in the past 8 years, and I always say to follow the visits. I haven't been able to say that in a year.
But follow the Zoom just doesn't have the same catch.
Right, exactly.
Nor is it as telling. Bart Adams asks, how would you compare Steve Angeli to the likes of other recent Notre Dame commits, Tyler Buckner, Drew Pine, Brendan Clark, and Phil Dracovic?
I mean, it's the quarterback position. I want to say this, and this might hit home with some Chicago Bears fans, but just like think about the Chicago Bears front office, like when they were drafting Mitchell Trubisky. Like maybe that, I don't know as much about that front office as Patrick would or some of you guys. But I mean, they got to be the Bears front office people and coaches, so they got to know something, right? They're not just complete bozos. So they have all of those quarterbacks, and that draft class had Patrick Mahomes, right, Patrick?
Yes, it did.
I could see you're just like, where are you going with this, Mike? Don't make me upset.
It's a mix of where are you going with this and like, thanks for driving the stake in, even though, okay. Justin Fields kind of, softens that.
So, right. Well, maybe. We'll see. So like, this Bears front office, they have literally all of the film you could possibly want on Trubisky. He was at North Carolina. I mean, the all 22 angles. Like, I mean, just think about with high school recruiting, you don't even know if those stats on Max Preps are legit. The film they get is not even that great. So, like, the point here is, just think about like the Bears drafting Mitchell Trubisky, and he stinks, and they have all of those resources to figure out. And those are the pro guys. Now you got college coaches going to recruit high schoolers at the quarterback position, like outside of like the 5-star no-brainers. I think quarterback recruiting is really difficult. I just do. So I don't think I've used that kind of example on air before. So I wanted to like kind of maybe give some context, or maybe people hate me for what I just said. But did that make sense, Patrick?
So how I took that was there's just going to be QB recruiting misses when you consider the circumstances, especially the circumstances in which most of these teams are recruiting 2022 QBs. Is that what you're kind of getting at here?
Okay, yeah.
Like
So
there's
the
just because of the
point
janky nature of recruiting.
the point is the NFL guys can't get it right, and they have so much resources to go get it right at the quarterback position. And like the college guys have so much less resources to go get the recruiting guys. And in this 2022 class, they couldn't go see him in person either. So that's kind of my port here, just to express my thoughts about quarterback recruiting is difficult. It's hard at the pro level to go find the college guys. Think about how much more difficult it is at the college level to go get the high school guys. Does that make sense?
Yes, and
Maybe.
I mean, yeah, yes, it makes sense. Like I follow where you're going with it, even though like I I think that yeah, everybody is going to miss, but I mean these coaches are well paid for a reason to see through these things and still hit as high an average as possible. Like I don't think there's going to be much sympathy as far as well, all right, we missed on this kid because this is hard, right? I don't know. I think that's just going to ring on a lot of deaf ears or tired
Yeah,
ears
probably.
of. Uh,
I said my
I mean,
piece.
yeah, again.
I said my piece. That's all.
Anyway, yes, Notre
Uh,
Dame should recruit Patrick
yeah,
Mahomes.
That's a
For anyone
great
who
comment,
sent this in
Braden.
the chat, yeah, the Bears
Yeah,
should recruit Patrick
that
Mahomes. Or
probably
should have
wasn't my greatest.
until they drafted Justin Fields.
Probably wasn't my greatest take, but okay. Well, let's actually get to Bart's question. How would you compare Angeli to the likes of other recent Notre Dame
Yes.
commits? I saw Phil Dracovic in person back in 2015 or 16. No, Phil was in the 2018 class, so I think that would have been 2016 at our Rivals 5-Star Challenge when he had Devontae Smith and Najee Harris on his 7-on-7 team. Dracovic did. And lit it up for sure. But I still don't know a ton. I didn't cover Notre Dame during Djokovic's recruitment. Also didn't cover Clark, so I can really only compare him to Buckner and Pine. Angeli he checked in at 6'2", 210 on Sunday. Buckner was listed by Notre Dame at 6'1", 197, and we all just saw Buckner in the spring game May 1st. He looked big. Again, I like my quarterbacks, thick and Angeli's already bigger than Buckner. I also want to mention Pine. I thought when he played against Alabama, he looked tiny, right, Patrick? I feel like this spring, he looked a little bigger, and that was just
He did.
3-4 months. And when we were at Five Guys in South Bend, we were pretty sure that Drew walked by, and I was like, "Are you sure?" Because that looks like a linebacker. A shorter linebacker, but he looked like a big dude. But okay, back to comparing them. I kind of already did a little bit. I think Angeli is Drew Pine between the ears and is clean mechanically. But Angeli's a couple inches taller than Pine. And then Buckner, Angeli just is not going to move like Buckner, but I still think about Buckner's Elite 11 performance last summer, and that's still fresh in my mind. About 11 months later, and just how he struggled to throw the football, to be honest. But it seemed like this spring he bounced back. My sources in South Bend, felt really good about his spring. So, we'll see. But Buckner seems to be back on the trending up a little bit. But to compare Angeli and Buckner, they're two different quarterbacks to me. Buckner is more of a true dual threat guy, and you can run him. I don't know how many design runs you're going to call for Steve Angeli.
Brandon Punzer asks again, is Nick Anderson a take right now with Notre Dame in a great spot with Williams and Merriweather, or would the Irish staff be willing to possibly wait it out for those two before accepting an Anderson commitment? Just a quick reference here. We're talking about Nicholas Anderson, the receiver from Katy, Texas, and the other two being CJ Williams, borderline 5-star from Southern California, Tobias Merriweather, 4-star from Oregon. What do you think?
Washington. But
Washington,
I think it's really
Vancouver,
close to,
Washington.
yeah,
Yeah, it's right on the border.
right on
That's
the
right.
border. Yeah.
On that river that I can't remember the name of, but it was the final river Lewis and Clark took to get to the Pacific.
Nice. You're such a nerd. I love it. All right. I'm all right. I'm gonna read this question again because it's a loaded one. It's a really good question. That I've actually asked some folks about recently, and the answer I basically got was, Anderson, that's a dogfight that Notre Dame's in for Anderson. Like, there's a bunch of other schools pushing for him. Rivals has him ranked as a low 3-star. ESPN has him like as a top 100 player in the country. So he's a big time prospect. His offer list reflects that. I think Rivals is a little bit behind on that ranking right now, at least in my opinion. So my answer to you, Brandon, is essentially I don't know right now, but that would be a really good problem for Notre Dame to have. And in that case, that might be a situation where they get to 4 receivers. Like if Anderson wants to commit, maybe you take him and then you still get Merriweather and Williams. But then do those guys want to be a 4th receiver? Like, do they want to be a part of a 4-man receiver class? Those are kind of all the questions there. But, again, it would be a really good question to have. I'm going to ask this one. Yeah. David Knight says Money Mike and Tricky. I like that. I like that nickname. David Knight gives our staff nicknames. He says, is Litchfield Ajavon relegated to the Pine for the rest of his career? I mean, Litchfield had a great little spring game.
Yeah, he popped Joe Wilkins, dislodging the ball there. I don't know that it's assumed, but at least right now it's kind of hard to see the road up there for him starting this year. Obviously, some guy who wears number 14 is locked into one of those starting spots. I think it's pretty clear right now that the other one, a battle between Houston Griffith and DJ Brown. We'll see if there's kind of a 4th safety role kind of up for grabs there, where that 4th safety is not really going to play a ton. That would have been last year KJ Wallace, I believe it was, and we barely saw him unless it was a occasional rep as a nickel guy or in mop-up duty or something like that. So I think it's possible that's where he goes, but again, upside for legit or meaningful every week snaps right now seems pretty low if we're talking about 2021.
So some comments from Roman, and Lou would love this. Rest in peace, Lou emoji. Says the recruiting intensity has increased with Freeman, but results. I need to see results before I crown Freeman. I'm a fan of Freeman, no doubt, but I'm tired of the hype with little results. I need to see defensive suds signing on board. The last podcast we did with Lou before he tragically passed, I basically, said something similar, that, Freeman's the new shiny toy. And then once Florida State, has a first down in September, everyone's going to be screaming to fire him. And then whenever he goes and there's a new DC, like he's going to be the new crown jewel and shiny toy. So, Lou said, quote, "You've learned well, young grasshopper." So,
but that was kind of my point, though, a little bit of my answer. Maybe I wasn't quite clear enough with it, but let's check back in at the end of the summer, like to see if a couple of these, top 100 guys that he's been been taking those swings on are, in the fold and committed. And then I think that answer is clear. I'm willing to bet that just based on the things we hear that you want Marcus Freeman to be that guy or that answer to that question that we got. But yeah, I think it's a more timelier question in August or December or February,
sure.
or when things are asked, just because, it's May 18th as we're sitting here recording this, and, you can only do so much damage and impact on the trail and starting taking names and, beating out Alabama and Ohio State and Clemson and Georgia and whoever for kids at this point in the cycle. So yeah, I think that's actually a fair point here. And again, I thought I made that somewhat clear a little bit earlier on, where yeah, let's see if how this plays out and if someone else kind of wiggles his way up in that conversation with a really strong summer of getting some guys.
So wrapping up here, gonna replay that Steve Angeli clip as we're slowing down. Roman with another hot comment. Roman, I don't recognize your name, but I appreciate your comments in here. I believe this is a first time live show viewer. So he's going back to the quarterback takes I had. He says it's not just resources regarding quarterback recruits. You're comparing NFL recruits with years of college experience compared to high school kids that are 16 and 17 when they play high school. Yes, if I didn't say that, then I apologize. Patrick
No, it's accurate.
Yeah, no, yeah, I can't believe
I just ultimately still think the our job is hard part is gonna not really get too much sympathy out there, especially when you look
I'm
at
not asking for sympathy.
figures
I'm just
going in their
saying
bank
that's
account.
the truth. It's just the
Yeah.
truth. I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, I'm not saying it that you got to be sympathetic towards the coaches. I'm just saying that to make the point that outside of just like the no-brainers, like Trevor Lawrence, I saw him the day after I saw Djokovic back in 2016 at our Rivals Underclassmen Challenge, and I was like, who the heck is Sunshine here from Remember the Titans? I was like, who? It was Trevor Lawrence, and I followed his high school career ever since then. It was just a no-brainer. Justin Fields, I saw when he was in high school at the Florida Gators Friday Night Lights camp throwing to Jamar Chase. Like, those two dudes were just no-brainers. But, is Angeli, Drew Pine, Tyler Buckner, are those guys high school recruits where you're just like, yes, they are definite going to lead Notre Dame to a college football playoff. Guys, and you can tell that in high school. No, they're not. Trevor Lawrence was, though. At least that's my opinion.
There we go.
That'll wake some people up.
All right, Brandon Plenser, thank you for the super chat. Coming in with another question for us, including Joey Tenona and Ty Chan, who are, of course, Notre Dame's 2 4-star offensive line commits. Who are the 3 other offensive line recruits you see in the Notre Dame class right now in 2022? Think of this again. If you had to bet 5,000 Dogecoins on how that class fills out, who are you taking?
So this is assuming I will say that it's 5, because it might just be 4. It just kind of depends on, as I always say with recruiting and numbers, it's very fluid, but it that kind of depends on who and when these things happen. Zach Rice, definitely not. No, I don't see Zach Rice in this class. Well, he's taking a visit in June, so we'll see. But I still think Billy Schrauth is a safe bet. I like where Notre Dame's at with Carson Hinsman, the center. And then it's like a toss-up between Jake Taylor and Joe Brunner. Maybe throw in Emil Wagner. There might be a tackle I'm forgetting that's visiting in June, but I think that's it. So that's my group. Or I'm gonna go with Schrauth. Give me Hinsman and give me Jake Taylor. I will take Jake Taylor as the offensive tackle commit. There's some buzz that he's trending Oklahoma, but I'm gonna go with stick to my guns and say it's Notre Dame. I'm gonna ask this one for you, Patrick. Unless you had a comment on the O-line.
It'd be a pretty close to best case scenario class, I think.
Yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely. Michael asks, which Notre Dame game are you looking forward to the most this year? I will ask this one to you, Mr. Engel. Which game are you looking forward to the most?
I like this one. I think it's kind of hard for me to separate those, I guess, big 3 ones you think of with USC, North Carolina, and Wisconsin, and not even to a degree throw Cincinnati in there. I think they'll be very good. Right now it's kind of hard to elevate one that's that much more compelling than the other. I mean, you kind of look at those as the 4 most difficult, or in particular, Carolina, USC, and Wisconsin is the 3 most difficult just on paper because they're in the Power 5 or whatever. Again, don't want to discount Cincinnati. I don't know. I thought that North Carolina win last year was perhaps Notre Dame's most, I don't know if I want to say impressive,
Complete,
but
underrated.
yeah, that's
Those
probably
are the
the
2 that
best.
come to my mind. Complete and underrated.
those are probably those are good adjectives for that. And just to see a follow up of it, I think is going to be really interesting because obviously the some of the ingredients from those teams last year are gone with Sam Howell not having his best skill players, uh, Notre Dame not having Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, Ian Book, and its veteran offensive line. But like the core identities of them are still there to a degree, right? North Carolina is going to throw the ball. Sam Howell is going to complete deep passes as well as anybody, theoretically. And they have some well thought of younger receivers kind of in the pine. Can Notre Dame's defense where does it land? Like, how much of an outlier was that much, like that handling of North Carolina for 3 quarters last year? Like, how repeatable is that, especially when you change coordinators? I guess I'm curious what range of outcome that falls in. If it's, I'd be surprised to see all right, Big 12 shootout kind of style thing where Notre Dame's given up 6 or 7 touchdowns or something like that. But what Notre Dame did in North Carolina last year is really, really, really hard to do and not something you bank on saying, oh, yeah, that's going to happen again.
And that was the game.
So
Kyle Hamilton was out in the second half, right?
it was. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, you get him for a full game theoretically. So yeah, I feel like I'm most intrigued by that. I'm a buyer on North Carolina, perhaps more than others who are other, just when you look at offseason top 25s or anything.
Patrick, you were a big fan of Miami last year, so like you thought Miami was legit. I remember you talking to Lou about those on the Irish Huddle. You took an L on that one though, so we'll see on your.
Okay, they laid one egg in against North Carolina where they didn't show up. I don't think this was some kind of tragically bad or 6-6 or whatever Miami team. Which I'll stay on it now. I'm kind of in on them for this year too, but Notre Dame's not in the ACC.
If I can give mine, it's Wisconsin. I think Notre Dame will roll past Florida State. Toledo and Purdue won't be a problem. 3-0 Notre Dame. I don't know Wisconsin's early season schedule, but let's just assume Wisconsin's also undefeated. I think that that's going to be a huge game. Christopher says that weak schedule could keep Notre Dame out of the playoff. Patrick, do you think that's a weak schedule?
If you're asking as far as can Notre Dame go 11-1 against this schedule and get in, I'd be less inclined to think so than, okay, it went 10-1 last year and got in. And that, I don't know, that extra game would have probably been a bye game at home or something like that. So just call it 11-1. Just because I don't know if it has like that signature marquee win potential, even though you look at, okay, there's a chance for 3, probably 4. If you had asked me to take the over on 3.5 teams that finish in the top 25 on the schedule, I'll take the over. I don't know that there's that signature victory opportunity per se, like there was with Clemson last year or twice last year. So no, I think it's less likely they can get in with one loss than it was last year. Of course, that depends on what other teams are in that playoff picture, how many other one-loss teams are vying for it, or if there's, how many undefeated teams there are that are pretty clearly in. But if you go 12-0 against this, I think it's pretty clear now if Notre Dame goes 12-0, it's getting in the playoff.
I just can't fault Notre Dame. Like when they pick this schedule, or not when they pick the schedule, but like when this schedule is made, like Florida State, like that's supposed to be a marquee opponent. Cincinnati's not supposed to be a marquee opponent, of course. Now Cincinnati is, but you look at Wisconsin, like Cincinnati. I think Notre Dame's going to beat Cincinnati. So then, of course, Cincinnati's not going to be like a top 6-7 team because they're going to have a loss. At Virginia Tech, USC, North Carolina, at Stanford, there's some really, at Florida State, obviously, there's some really good games. I don't think that it's a weak schedule, but yet with a loss in no conference championship game, that's obviously going to be difficult, and that's been the case for Notre Dame for the past however many years.
I don't know when this Oh, yeah, super chat. Okay. One final thought. I don't know when this schedule came together in full, but if you were to rewind it 5 years ago, it probably is the same amount of juice or power potential. You'd think uh, games of Florida State or Stanford or all right, those are pretty safely top 25s. You probably don't think that about Cincinnati
Right.
or North Carolina. That kind of stuff evens out again.
You're probably right.
Well,
Yeah, it's a good point.
but yeah, I mean, you don't think Cincinnati is going to come in here when you're paying them $1.2 million or whatever it is and be
Seriously?
a likely top 10 team. Yeah, it's a buy game.
Holy crap.
Yeah, that would add to the sting if Notre Dame were to lose that game.
Yeah.
But they'll be favored. Super chat. All right, what we got?
Oh, is it? Oh, sorry. That's me. That's me. Sorry.
Brandon, just thank you. We love you. What does
Thank
Notre
you,
Dame
buddy.
usually do or plan to do this June for official visits for families, player families, I should say, that you're aware of? What kind of activities take place during an official visit? Okay, a little inside baseball question here.
Yeah. I was actually asked this question on Saturday by a recruit's family, and my question was like, I don't know because I've never been on one, but I've interviewed like 1,000 recruits about their official visits. So I can like, and typically those interviews are the atmosphere was great, the campus is beautiful, I like the coaching staff, so it's kind of generic. But in terms of what they do, they eat a lot of good food. Um, I would imagine Brian Kelly's Lake House is going to be lit with these prospects. Obviously, they tour the campus. They're going to have the academic presentation. One thing that is really, really important to these recruits is hanging out with the players. Like, that has surprised me that that's like a number one thing. When you ask a recruit, like, what are you looking forward to about your official visit? It's, I want to hang out with the players. Like, I want to get to know these guys. Like, what kind of players are here? What do they say about Notre Dame? Because, like, the coaches are salesmen, right? The players, though, they are going to be a little bit, but like when you're hanging out with, a dude on your official visit, they're you're gonna be real with you, Like, of course, they're not just gonna start bad mouthing Notre Dame. Maybe they would. Maybe they would just start bad mouthing the staff. But I feel like for the most part, Notre Dame would pick the player hosts strategically. But that's a huge part of it. Brandon is the Notre Dame recruits hanging out with the current players, and that's why Notre Dame's not having visits in June 4th because the players are not back on campus. I believe it's. Do you know off the top of your head when they come back? Because they're having official visitors June 11th, and I feel like the players move back for summer courses like right around then.
Exact date. I'm not sure. Let's see if the crack staff can
Always a
get on
crack
that
staff.
for us.
As you are, excuse me, as the crack staff's looking that up, Patrick says Toledo ? Yeah, Toledo's a fine game too. I don't remember what their record was, but their coach, why is his name? Jason Candle. He's had that program solid for the past several years. Shout out to Mount Union, top Division III program in the country. That's where Jason Candle's from. So,
That's
crack
right.
staff on it.
Cradle of coaches. Crack staff is on it. Yes, I have been told from our great crack staff, just tireless workers. Notre Dame's summer 2021 term begins June 14th, and you suspect players will come in. That would be a Monday or Tuesday. I'm not sure. Players will probably come in that weekend.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
Come in the weekend before, or say the Thursday or Friday before, to move in and get ready, and obviously hang around on official visits here.
Yeah.
And yeah, if we're talking Toledo for a minute, I'll be honest, I think that's pretty low on my list of games I'm looking forward to. Not to take anything away from Jason Candle from Mount Union, the cradle of coaches. But
There you go.
Yeah, that's not too high on the list.
Here's a fun fact about Mount Union. My high school coach, when I was in Florida, he played for Jason Candle at Mount Union. And was on his staff at Toledo several years ago as a grad assistant too. He actually left right after I graduated high school and left our high school to go be a grad assistant for Toledo. But so yeah, that was kind of cool. And I covered. Here's another fun fact. I covered Toledo at Rivals for 2 months.
Wow!
Did you know that, Patrick? I covered I think if you go to the Toledo, let's
find out. I mean,
let's get the crack staff
this
on
is
this.
absolutely the most rabid recruiting fan base that you've ever worked for, obviously, right? I mean, those Rockets fans, hey, just want to see, you're dying to see who's going to be playing in front of them in the glass bowl.
So look at this, 2016. Look at Mike
Wow.
Singer.
Look at that. Just relics here.
There I am, Kenny Robinson. Wonder what, he's man. This is like, yeah. So there was my big story right there. So fun fun times about 5 years ago.
Shouts to the Toledo Rockets.
Yeah. Who knew that we are just gonna spend some time talking about Toledo? But I think that's gonna wrap up this show, Patrick.
Yes, I think when we start, going down in the rabbit hole of Toledo recruiting, it's a good sign. A good sign to wrap it up. We appreciate you guys watching. If you tuned in live, you're watching. If, of course, you're playing this back on YouTube, and of course, podcast audience. Thanks as always for listening to another episode of Pod Like a Champion. You can follow us on Twitter at Patrick Engel _ That's me, at Rivals _ Singer. That's Mike. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Leave us a rating. Leave us a review. Hit that thumbs up button on YouTube. If you do any of those things, we'll love you forever. We'll talk to you again in probably a couple of weeks as I go on a little break next week. But until then, take care.